Life does not always move the way we expect. Sometimes it feels peaceful and manageable, and suddenly everything changes. A difficult conversation can ruin a good day. A financial problem can create fear. A health issue can shake confidence. A loss can leave emptiness. A delay can create frustration. In such moments, many people feel like they are losing control. Chaos is not always loud. Sometimes it enters quietly through overthinking, through pressure, through responsibilities, and through the silent fear of not knowing what comes next. A person may look fine from the outside, but feel exhausted inside. This is the reality of modern life. Many people are carrying emotional weight that others cannot see. The truth is that chaos is a part of being human. No one can escape uncertainty. No one can control every event. No one can stop life from changing. What matters is not whether chaos arrives, but how we respond when it does. Real strength of a person is often revealed in the middle of confusion, not in moments of comfort. Staying calm does not mean pretending that everything is fine. It does not mean becoming emotionless or ignoring pain. True calmness means staying steady. Even when life feels unstable, it means protecting your mind when circumstances become heavy. It means learning how to pause instead of panic, how to think instead of react, and how to trust yourself, even when the path is unclear. Many people believe that calmness is something only naturally strong people have. This is not true. Calmness is not a gift that only a few are born with. It is a skill. It can be learned, built, and strengthened over time, just like patience, discipline, and confidence. The mind can be trained to become more peaceful even in difficult situations. This journey is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming stronger from the inside. It is about understanding your emotions instead of being controlled by them. It is about creating peace in your thoughts so that outside problems do not completely break your spirit. In this book, you will learn how to face pressure without collapsing, how to manage fear without losing yourself, and how to build emotional balance during uncertain times. You will explore practical ways to protect your peace, understand your reactions, and develop habits that bring stability. Life may become chaotic again and again, but that does not mean you have to become chaotic with it. You can learn to stand still when everything feels like it is moving too fast. You can create calm in the middle of storms. You can become the kind of person who does not break easily, not because life became easier, but because you became wiser, stronger, and more peaceful within yourself. Life does not always move the way we expect. Sometimes it feels peaceful and manageable, and suddenly everything changes. A difficult conversation can ruin a good day. A financial problem can create fear. A health issue can shake confidence. A loss can leave emptiness. A delay can create frustration. In such moments, many people feel like they are losing control. Chaos is not always loud. Sometimes it enters quietly through overthinking, through pressure, through responsibilities, and through the silent fear of not knowing what comes next. A person may look fine from the outside, but feel exhausted inside. This is the reality of modern life. Many people are carrying emotional weight that others cannot see. The truth is that chaos is a part of being human. No one can escape uncertainty. No one can control every event. No one can stop life from changing. What matters is not whether chaos arrives, but how we respond when it does. Real strength of a person is often revealed in the middle of confusion, not in moments of comfort. Staying calm does not mean pretending that everything is fine. It does not mean becoming emotionless or ignoring pain. True calmness means staying steady even when life feels unstable. It means protecting your mind when circumstances become heavy. It means learning how to pause instead of panic, how to think instead of react, and how to trust yourself even when the path is unclear. Many people believe that calmness is something only naturally strong people have. This is not true. Calmness is not a gift that only a few are born with. It is a skill. It can be learned, built, and strengthened over time. Just like patience, discipline, and confidence, the mind can be trained to become more peaceful even in difficult situations. This journey is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming stronger from the inside. It is about understanding your emotions instead of being controlled by them. It is about creating peace in your thoughts so that outside problems do not completely break your spirit. In this book, you will learn how to face pressure without collapsing, how to manage fear without losing yourself, and how to build emotional balance during uncertain times. You will explore practical ways to protect your peace, understand your reactions, and develop habits that bring stability. Life may become chaotic again and again, but that does not mean you have to become chaotic with it. You can learn to stand still when everything feels like it is moving too fast. You can create calm in the middle of storms. You can become the kind of person who does not break easily, not because life became easier, but because you became wiser, stronger, and more peaceful within yourself. Chapter 2. The Power of Pausing Before You React. One of the biggest mistakes people make during difficult times is believing that every problem needs an immediate reaction. When life feels chaotic, the mind often becomes rushed. Fear creates urgency. Stress creates pressure. Emotions become louder than wisdom. In these moments, people often speak too quickly, decide too quickly, and panic too quickly. This is where many situations become worse than they need to be. Chaotic moment is rarely dangerous, only because of the event itself. It becomes dangerous because of what happens inside us after the event. The mind starts racing. The heart feels unsettled. Thoughts jump from one fear to another. A small issue suddenly feels like proof that everything is falling apart. This mental speed creates emotional exhaustion. Most people do not realize how much damage can happen in a few rushed moments. A harsh reply in anger can damage a relationship. A fear-based decision can create regret. A moment of panic can lead to unnecessary mistakes. Often the pain people carry later in life is not only from what happened to them, but from how they reacted when they were overwhelmed. This is why the ability to pause is one of the most powerful emotional skills a person can develop. Pausing is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is not running away from reality. A pause is a form of emotional intelligence. It is the space between what happens and what you choose to do next. When you pause, you give yourself something valuable that chaos tries to steal from you. That thing is clarity. Without clarity, even simple problems feel impossible. With clarity, even difficult situations become manageable. A pause does not need to be dramatic. It can be a few deep breaths before answering someone. It can be stepping away from an argument for 10 minutes. It can be choosing to sleep before making a major decision. It can be sitting quietly and allowing your emotions to settle before speaking or acting. This may sound simple, but simple actions often create the deepest change. The mind cannot think clearly when it feels threatened. When stress rises, the body moves into a reactive state. The nervous system becomes tense, muscles tighten, breathing becomes shallow, thoughts become narrow. In this state, people often focus only on danger and lose sight of perspective. A pause interrupts this cycle. It tells your body that not every stressful moment is an emergency. It reminds your mind that discomfort does not always require instant action. Slowly, this creates emotional stability. Many people fear because they think stopping means losing control. In reality, the opposite is true. People who never pause are usually controlled by their emotions without realizing it. They mistake impulsive action for strength, but true strength is being able to hold yourself steady in the middle of emotional pressure. Think about how often life pushes people into reaction. Someone criticizes you, and your first instinct is to defend yourself. Someone disappoints you, and your first instinct is anger. Something goes wrong, and your first instinct is to assume the worst. This pattern becomes automatic over time, and the mind begins to live in constant emotional tension. Breaking this pattern begins with awareness. The next time life feels heavy, notice your first internal reaction. Do you feel the need to fix everything immediately? Do you begin imagining the worst possible outcome? Do you speak sharply because your emotions feel bigger than your patience? These moments are opportunities to practice calmness. Pausing does not remove pain, but it stops pain from turning into unnecessary damage. It gives your wiser self time to return, because wisdom is often quiet, while fear is loud. For example, imagine a father who comes home after a stressful day at work. He is already carrying pressure from deadlines, money worries, and mental fatigue. When he walks into the house, his child accidentally breaks something valuable. In that moment, his frustration rises instantly. He feels anger and disappointment, and his first instinct is to shout. If he reacts immediately, he may hurt his child, emotionally create fear in the home, and later feel guilt for losing control. The broken object may be replaceable, but the emotional impact of that moment may remain much longer now. Imagine the same father choosing to pause. He notices his anger rising. He takes a breath. He walks into another room for a moment. He allows his nervous system to settle before speaking. When he returns, he still addresses the situation, but with calmness rather than rage. The lesson is still taught, but without emotional harm. The event did not change. The pause changed the outcome. Another example is someone receiving unexpected bad news, such as a rejected opportunity or a failed plan. Many people instantly begin attacking themselves. They think, I am not good enough, nothing ever works for me, my future is ruined. These thoughts create emotional collapse before the person has even had time to fully understand the situation. But a pause creates space for truth. Instead of turning one setback into a life sentence, the person gives themselves time to process. They allow disappointment without making permanent conclusions based on temporary pain. This emotional pause often becomes the difference between resilience and breakdown. The truth is that not every feeling deserves immediate trust. Just because something feels overwhelming in the moment does not mean it will feel the same tomorrow. Emotions are real, but they are not always reliable guides in moments of stress. This is why learning to pause protects both your peace and your future. One of the most healing things you can tell yourself in difficult moments is, I do not need to solve everything right now. This sentence can bring great relief because it removes false urgency. Many people suffer not because they lack solutions, but because they believe they must have all the answers immediately. Life often becomes clearer when you stop forcing it. Calmness is not always about fixing. Sometimes it is about allowing space for the mind to settle enough to see what matters. Pausing also helps you reconnect with your body. Stress often disconnects people from themselves. They stop noticing their breath, their tiredness, their emotional limits, and their need for rest. A pause brings you back into the present. It reminds you that this moment is where your power exists, not in the imagined disasters of tomorrow. The world often rewards speed, but inner peace is built through slowness. There is wisdom in waiting. There is power in silence. There is healing in taking one breath before one word, before one decision, and before one fear takes over your mind. Learning to pause is one of the first true acts of self-respect. It means you value your peace enough not to hand it over to every stressful moment. It means you trust yourself enough to slow down instead of collapsing into panic. Life will continue to test you. Unexpected problems will still come. People will still disappoint you. Plans will still change. But when you learn the art of pausing, you stop becoming a prisoner of every emotion. You begin to lead yourself through life instead of being dragged by it. In chaos, the pause is not empty. It is where strength begins. It is where peace returns. It is where your calm self waits for you to come back home to yourself. Chapter 3. Accepting what you cannot control without losing yourself. One of the deepest sources of stress in life is the desire to control things that were never fully ours to control in the first place. Many people do not realize how much emotional pain comes from fighting reality rather than facing it. A large part of suffering is not only caused by difficult situations, but by the inner resistance we create against them. People want certainty because certainty feels safe. They want plans to work exactly as expected. They want relationships to remain stable. They want effort to always lead to reward. They want people to behave fairly and life to feel predictable. But life does not move according to human comfort. It changes without warning. It surprises without permission, and sometimes takes away what we worked hard to build. This truth can feel uncomfortable, yet it is also one of the most freeing truths a person can accept. The more you try to force life into your preferred shape, the more exhausted you become. Peace begins when you understand the difference between what deserves your effort and what requires your acceptance. Many people lose themselves because they spend too much time fighting things they cannot change. They replay conversations in their minds, wishing they had said something different. They hold on to people who have already emotionally left. They resist endings because they fear what comes next. They keep asking why something happened, even when no clear answer exists. This endless inner struggle drains emotional energy. It keeps the mind trapped in the past or anxious about the future. A person may look physically present, yet mentally live inside worry, regret, fear, and imagined outcomes. This is one of the quietest ways chaos takes over a life. Acceptance does not mean liking pain. It does not mean approving unfairness. It does not mean becoming passive or giving up. It simply means seeing reality clearly without wasting your peace, trying to deny what already is. This is one of the hardest emotional skills because the mind often believes that holding on equals strength. People think that if they keep worrying, they are being responsible. If they keep overthinking, they are staying prepared. If they keep chasing control, they are protecting themselves. But often they are only deepening their own suffering. Real strength is not found in controlling every outcome. Real strength is found in remaining steady when outcomes are uncertain. The calmer person is not the one with fewer problems, but the one who has learned not to let every uncertainty become emotional destruction. Life becomes lighter when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is in my control right now?" This shift changes your relationship with pain. It moves you from helplessness to grounded action. There are always things within your power. Even in difficult times, you can choose your response. You can choose your words. You can choose how you care for your body. You can choose whether to seek help or isolate yourself. You can choose whether to feed fear or create small stability through daily habits. When people feel chaotic, they often become mentally scattered because they focus too much on what they cannot fix immediately. The future feels too large. The uncertainty feels too heavy. But peace is often rebuilt in smaller ways than people expect. Sometimes calmness begins by simply making your bed, drinking water, taking a walk, replying to one important message, or sleeping properly. These actions may seem ordinary, but they matter because they return you to yourself. Chaos makes people feel powerless. Small intentional actions restore a sense of direction. For example, imagine a young woman who has spent years building a relationship. She imagines a future with someone and feels emotionally invested. Suddenly, the relationship ends. She feels shocked, abandoned, and deeply hurt. Her mind becomes full of questions. Why did this happen? Could I have done more? Will I ever feel okay again? First, she keeps checking old messages, replaying memories, and hoping for explanations that may never come. She cannot sleep well and loses peace because her mind is trying to control something that has already changed. The relationship is over, but emotionally, she is still fighting reality every day. Now imagine the moment she begins accepting the truth, not because it feels easy, but because resisting it is destroying her. She allows herself to grieve without chasing answers that no longer exist. She stops forcing closure from someone else and begins creating closure within herself. She returns to daily routines, reconnects with people who care for her, and slowly rebuilds trust. in life again. Pain may not disappear quickly, but her suffering decreases because she is no longer fighting what has already happened. Her peace begins to return not because the loss became smaller, but because her resistance became lighter. Another example is a man facing a serious health challenge. He has always been active and independent. Suddenly his body is no longer functioning the same way. He feels frustrated, angry, and scared. Because he cannot control the situation as he once controlled his routine. At first, he becomes bitter. He compares himself to his old self and feels defeated every day because reality no longer matches his expectations. His suffering grows because he is not only dealing with illness, but also with constant emotional rejection of his new circumstances. Then, slowly he begins shifting his mindset. He stops measuring his worth by what he has lost and starts focusing on what remains within his power. He follows treatment, takes care of his mind, and creates meaning in smaller victories. He learns that acceptance is not surrender, but wisdom. This change does not remove the hardship, but it gives him back dignity, peace, and emotional strength. These examples show something powerful. Pain is often unavoidable, but prolonged suffering is frequently increased by resistance. The more tightly you hold on to how life should have been, the more difficult it becomes to live the life that is still in front of you. Accepting what you cannot control also protects your identity. During hard times, many people begin to define themselves by what they lost. A failed business becomes, I am a failure. A broken relationship becomes, I am unlovable. A delayed dream becomes, my life is over. This is dangerous because temporary circumstances begin shaping permanent self-belief. You are not your worst moment. You are not your setback. You are not your pain. Circumstances can challenge you, but they do not have the right to define your worth unless you hand them that power. Acceptance helps you protect this truth. It reminds you that life can change without taking away who you are at your core. You can feel grief without becoming hopeless. You can feel fear without becoming weak. You can face uncertainty without losing your identity. One of the most peaceful habits a person can build is learning to release the need for perfect outcomes. This does not mean becoming careless. It means understanding that peace cannot depend on everything going your way if your calmness only exists when life feels easy. Then it is fragile. But if your peace is rooted in your mindset, your values, and your ability to adapt, then it becomes strong. The truth is, life will always contain things you cannot control. People will leave, plans will change. Unexpected problems will arise, and answers will not always come when you want them. But none of these realities have to destroy you. You do not need control over everything to feel safe. You need trust in your ability to face what comes. This trust is built slowly through experience, through patience, and through choosing peace again and again. Acceptance is not giving up on life. It is making peace with the fact that life is bigger than your plans. It is choosing to stop wrestling with reality so that you have the energy to live it. When you release what is not yours to carry, you make space for something better. You make space for clarity, for healing, for resilience, and for a calmer version of yourself. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop forcing and start allowing, stop chasing and start trusting, stop resisting and start breathing. That is where real peace begins. Not in controlling life, but in learning that even when life changes, you still have the power to remain whole within yourself. Chapter 4, Building Inner Stability. Through daily habits, many people believe calmness appears only in big moments of crisis. They think peace is something they will somehow find when life becomes difficult. But true calmness is not built in the middle of the storm. It is built in the ordinary days before the storm arrives. Way you live when life feels normal often determines how you respond when life feels chaotic. A mind that is constantly rushed, neglected, and emotionally overloaded will struggle when pressure increases. A mind that has been cared for, trained, and grounded will have a much stronger chance of remaining steady. This is why daily habits matter more than most people realize. Habits are not just routines. They are emotional foundations. They quietly shape your thoughts, your energy, your patience, and your ability to handle stress. When your life has no structure, even small problems can feel overwhelming. But when you create healthy patterns, your mind feels safer and more supported. Inner stability does not come from one motivational moment or one deep realization. It comes from repetition. It comes from the small things you do consistently that teach your mind and body how to feel safe. One of the most important truths about emotional peace is that the nervous system responds to patterns. Your body notices how you treat yourself every day. It remembers your sleep habits, your stress levels, your breathing, your food, your rest, and your emotional environment. Even if you try to ignore your needs, your body does not. When people say they suddenly broke down emotionally, the truth is that the breakdown often began much earlier. It began in the nights they did not rest, in the emotions they kept suppressing, in the pressure they kept carrying, and in the care they kept postponing. A peaceful life is not always created by removing problems. Sometimes it is created by strengthening yourself enough that problems stop feeling bigger than youth. First habit that builds inner stability is creating a predictable rhythm for yourself. The human mind feels safer when it has some sense of order. This does not mean life must be rigid. It simply means that certain daily anchors can reduce emotional chaos. Waking up at a regular time, sleeping properly, eating, consistently moving your body, and having moments of stillness all create signals of safety for your mind. These habits may sound basic, but basic things are often the first to disappear when life becomes stressful, and that is exactly why they matter. Sleep is one of the most underestimated parts of emotional health. A tired mind is far more reactive than a rested one. When sleep is poor, small frustrations feel larger, emotions feel heavier, and patience becomes harder to access. Many people try to solve emotional struggles without first addressing their exhaustion. Rest is not weakness, it is emotional repair. A person who protects their sleep is not avoiding responsibility. They are protecting their ability to face it well. Movement is another powerful stabilizer. The body stores stress even when the mind tries to ignore it. Walking, stretching, light exercise, or simply getting fresh air helps release tension that silently builds throughout the day. You do not need extreme fitness to feel better. You simply need regular movement that reconnects you with your body. Stillness is equally important. Many people stay overwhelmed because they never give their minds a quiet place to land. Their days are full of noise, screens, conversations, tasks, and worries. Without moments of pause, the mind never fully resets. A few minutes of silence, deep breathing, prayer, reflection, or simply sitting without distraction can slowly create powerful emotional shifts. These moments teach your mind that peace is available, even if life is busy. Another is reducing mental clutter. Many people feel overwhelmed not only because of responsibilities, but because their minds are carrying too many unfinished thoughts. They keep everything in their head. Worries, reminders, fears, expectations, regrets, and pressure all compete for attention. Writing things down can bring surprising relief. A simple journal or daily note can help organize thoughts, release stress, and create clarity. The goal is not perfect writing. The goal is to stop your mind from carrying everything alone. Emotional boundaries also matter deeply. Inner stability becomes difficult when your life is constantly shaped by other people's moods, demands, and expectations. Many people lose peace because they say yes too often. They overextend themselves to avoid guilt. They keep giving from an already empty place. A calm life requires honest limits. Sometimes protecting your peace means disappointing others. Sometimes it means saying no without explaining too much. Sometimes it means stepping back from draining conversations, toxic environments, or unhealthy patterns. This is not selfish. It is responsible. You cannot build peace while constantly abandoning yourself for Example: imagine a man who works long hours and constantly says yes to extra tasks because he wants to be seen as reliable. Over time, he becomes exhausted. He stops sleeping, feels irritated at home, and begins losing joy in things he once enjoyed. He tells himself this is just adulthood and keeps pushing through. Eventually, his body and mind force him to stop. He experiences burnout and feels emotionally numb. The problem was not one difficult week. The problem was the daily habit of ignoring his limits. Now imagine if he had begun making small changes earlier. He sets healthier work boundaries, protects his sleep, takes short walks after work, and allows himself recovery time. He still works hard, but he no longer treats exhaustion as normal. Over time, his mind becomes more balanced and his stress feels manageable. The outer demands may still exist, but his inner foundation becomes stronger. Another example is a mother who spends all day caring for others, but never gives herself space to reset. She wakes up tired, rushes through tasks, and ends each day feeling unseen and depleted. She begins feeling resentful and guilty at the same time because she loves her family but feels lost inside. First, she thinks self-care is a luxury she cannot afford, but eventually she realizes that neglecting herself is affecting everyone around her. She begins waking slightly earlier for quiet time. She takes small breaks without guilt. She asks for help when needed and stops seeing rest as selfish. Slowly, her mood improves, her patience returns, and she feels more emotionally present. The change did not happen because life became easy. It happened because she began treating her own well-being as essential. These examples reveal an important truth. Daily habits are not small when they shape the quality of your mind every day. The little things you repeat become the emotional climate you live inside. People often wait for life to slow down before they start caring for themselves, but peace rarely arrives through waiting. It is built through intention. Even in busy seasons, even in hard seasons, you can create moments of steadiness. Inner stability is not about controlling every day perfectly. Some days will still feel hard. Some habits will be missed. Some seasons will feel heavier than others. That is normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is consistency and self-respect. Every time you choose sleep over unnecessary stress, every time you take a walk instead of feeding anxious thoughts, every time you say no to what drains you and yes to what grounds you, you're teaching yourself something important. You are teaching yourself that your peace matters. A stable inner life is one of the greatest protections against chaos, because when your mind knows how to return to safety, it becomes harder for external problems to completely shake you. Life may remain unpredictable, but your response does not have to be. You can become someone who feels deeply without drowning, who faces pressure without collapsing, and who returns to calm, not by chance, but by practice. Peace is not built in one dramatic breakthrough. It is built quietly in the choices you make every day. The habits you create today are the emotional shelter you will live inside tomorrow. Chapter 5. Protecting your mind from overthinking and fear. One of the fastest ways chaos takes control of a person is through overthinking. A difficult moment happens, and the mind immediately begins creating stories around it. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A small mistake becomes proof of failure. A setback becomes a sign that the future is ruined. This is how fear grows. It often begins with uncertainty and then expands through imagination. The mind is powerful, but when left unchecked, it can also become exhausting. It can replay painful memories, create endless what-if questions, and turn temporary stress into constant emotional pressure. Many people do not suffer only from what is happening in their lives. They suffer from the thousands of fearful thoughts they create around what might happen next. Overthinking feels like action, but most of the time, it is not progress. It is mental looping. It creates the false feeling that if you think hard enough, you will gain certainty or control. But in reality, Excessive thinking often steals both peace and perspective. Fear works in a similar way. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it appears quietly, as hesitation, self-doubt, tension, or the inability to rest. It can keep a person stuck for months or even years because they become more focused on avoiding pain than living life. Difficult truth is that the mind does not naturally stay calm on its own. It must be guided. If you do not learn how to direct your thoughts, then your fears will often direct them for you. This does not mean you can control every thought that enters your mind. Thoughts appear automatically based on stress, past experiences, and emotional habits. But you can control what you feed, what you repeat, and what you choose to believe. This is where true emotional discipline begins, not by forcing yourself to never feel fear, but by refusing to let fear become the loudest voice in your life. One of the most important things to understand is that thoughts are not facts. Just because your mind says something does not make it true. A stressed mind often speaks in extremes. It says everything is ruined, nothing will work, nobody cares, and you are not enough. These thoughts may feel convincing in emotional moments, but feelings are not always accurate reflections of reality. Learning to question your thoughts is a powerful act of self-protection. When fear speaks, ask yourself, is this true, or is this my stress talking? What evidence do I actually have? Am I responding to reality or to my worst-case imagination? This simple habit can stop fear from growing into panic. Another powerful way to protect your mind is to stop feeding thoughts that only create more fear. Many people unintentionally strengthen anxiety by constantly checking bad news, comparing themselves to others, scrolling endlessly, or repeatedly discussing the same worries without action. What you repeatedly expose your mind to becomes part of your emotional environment. If your mind is always surrounded by fear, pressure, and negativity, it becomes harder to feel safe. Protecting your peace sometimes means limiting what enters your mind. This may include stepping away from draining conversations, reducing social media, taking breaks from constant updates, or spending less time around people who spread stress instead of calm. Your mind deserves protection just as much as your body does. Grounding yourself in the present moment is another essential skill. Overthinking pulls people into imagined futures and unresolved pasts. Fear lives most strongly in places where you are not currently standing. A person may be safe in the present moment, yet feel terrified because their mind is living inside a future disaster that has not happened. Coming back to the present reduces this emotional distance. Ask yourself, what is actually happening right now? Not next week, not next month, but right now. Often the answer is much calmer than the story fear is telling. You are breathing. You are here. You are still standing. This moment may be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not destruction. Body can also help calm the mind. Fear often creates physical symptoms: tight chest, racing thoughts, restlessness, and shallow breathing. If you only try to calm fear through thinking, you may stay stuck because your body is still holding stress. Slow breathing helps signal safety to the nervous system. Gentle movement helps release stored tension. Fresh air, quiet space, and slower routines all help bring the body back into balance. When the body begins calming, the mind often follows. Another key habit is refusing to make fear your identity. Some people become so used to anxious thinking that they begin believing this is simply who they are. They say, I am just an anxious person. I always overthink. I never stay calm. These statements may feel honest, but repeating them strengthens them. The mind believes what it hears often. If you constantly describe yourself as powerless, your brain begins treating that as truth. Instead, begin speaking to yourself with more honesty and hope. You may struggle with fear, but that does not mean fear owns you. You may have anxious thoughts, but that does not mean you are weak. You are learning. You are growing, and you are capable of change. For example, imagine a student waiting for important exam results. He checks his phone every few minutes, cannot sleep properly, and keeps imagining failure. He begins thinking that one result will decide his entire future. His mind creates pressure far bigger than the actual situation. Days pass, his fear increases not because the result has changed, but because his mind keeps feeding uncertainty. He avoids sleep over text messages and loses peace over something he cannot speed up now. Imagine he chooses a different response. He accepts that waiting is uncomfortable, but stops turning waiting into suffering. He limits how often he checks updates, returns to healthy routines, and reminds himself that one result does not define his worth. He still cares deeply, but he no longer lets fear control his days. Situation remains uncertain, but his mind becomes more protected. Another example is a woman who constantly worries about losing the people she loves. Because of past pain, she becomes fearful whenever someone is distant or busy. She reads into every silence and creates worst-case stories in her mind. She feels emotionally exhausted, not because anything bad has happened, but because fear keeps convincing her that something will eventually. She begins recognizing the pattern. She notices how often her fear is based on past wounds rather than present facts. She starts pausing before assuming the worst. She communicates clearly instead of creating stories in silence. She learns to soothe herself instead of seeking constant reassurance. Over time, her relationships improve not because life became predictable, but because she stopped allowing fear to lead every emotional moment. These examples show that overthinking is often less about the situation and more about the relationship you have with uncertainty. If you cannot tolerate not knowing, your mind will keep creating stories to fill the gap, but stories created by fear rarely bring peace. Learning to live without needing every answer is one of the deepest forms of emotional freedom. It allows you to breathe even when life feels unclear. It teaches you that uncertainty is uncomfortable but survivable. Protecting your mind also means being careful about where your energy goes. Not every worry deserves your attention. Not every fear deserves a full emotional reaction. Some thoughts need compassion, some need challenge, and some simply need to be let go. Peaceful people are not those who never feel fear. They are people who have learned how to stop fear from becoming their ruler. They feel concern without becoming consumed. They notice thoughts without obeying all of them. This is a skill, and like every skill, it improves with practice. The first few times you interrupt overthinking, it may feel unnatural. That is normal. You are teaching your mind a new way of living. Every time you choose truth over panic, presence over prediction, and trust over mental chaos, you are building inner strength. You are proving to yourself that your mind can become a place of safety rather than struggle. Life will always contain unknowns. You will not always have immediate answers, and certainty will never be guaranteed. But peace does not come from knowing everything. Peace comes from knowing that even when fear appears, you do not have to follow it. A calm mind is not an accident. It is a protected space built through awareness, discipline, and daily choices. The more you guard your thoughts, the less chaos can take root inside you. Chapter 6. Finding strength and support and human connection. One of the most harmful beliefs people carry during chaotic times is the idea that they must handle everything alone. Many people have been taught directly or indirectly that asking for help is weakness. They believe strength means silence, endurance, and carrying pain without burdening anyone else. But this belief often creates deeper suffering because isolation can make even manageable problems feel unbearable. Human beings are not designed to carry every emotional weight alone. People need connection, not because they are weak, but because they are human. In difficult seasons, support can become one of the strongest sources of calmness. A kind conversation, a listening ear, a comforting presence, or practical help can reduce emotional pressure in ways that self-struggle often cannot. Chaos has a way of making people withdraw. When stress builds, many become quieter. They stop replying to messages, avoid calls, and keep their pain hidden. They tell themselves no one will understand, or they fear being judged. Some feel ashamed that they are not coping better. Others do not want to appear needy or vulnerable. But the truth is that silence often magnifies pain. Problems feel heavier in isolation because the mind has no healthy place to release what it is carrying. Unspoken fear grows louder. Unshared sadness becomes deeper, and emotional exhaustion becomes harder to recognize. Support does not always remove the problem, but it often makes the burden feel less crushing. Knowing that someone sees you, hears you, and cares about your well-being can create emotional relief, even before circumstances improve. There is something deeply healing about being understood. Many people spend years trying to appear strong, while quietly falling apart inside. They become so used to carrying everything privately that they forget peace can also come through being honest. Opening up does not mean sharing everything with everyone. It means allowing yourself to be real with safe people who genuinely care. This could be a trusted friend, family member, a partner, a mentor, a support group, or a mental health professional. The important thing is not who looks perfect from the outside, but who makes you feel emotionally safe. Real support is not always advice. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can offer is presence. Someone who listens without rushing to fix you. Someone who lets you speak honestly without shame. Someone who reminds you that struggling does not make you less worthy. One of the reasons support feels difficult for many people is because asking for help requires vulnerability, and vulnerability can feel risky, especially for those who have been hurt, disappointed, or misunderstood before. But staying emotionally closed often protects pain rather than healing. True courage is not pretending to be unaffected. True courage is being honest enough to say, "This is hard for me. I need support. I do not want to carry this alone." These words can become the beginning of deep healing. Another important part of connection is learning to receive care. Many people know how to help others, but feel uncomfortable when support is offered to them. They minimize their pain, reject kindness, or feel guilty for needing rest and comfort. This often comes from old beliefs that love must be earned through performance, or that needing help makes them a burden. These beliefs are damaging because they create emotional loneliness, even in the presence of caring people. Healing often begins when you allow yourself to receive the same compassion you so easily give others. Connection also includes the relationship you have with yourself. If you constantly criticize yourself during hard times, you become emotionally alone. Even in a room full of people, self-compassion matters deeply because the voice you hear most often in chaos is your own. When life feels heavy, ask yourself, am I speaking to myself in a way that helps me heal, or in a way that makes me feel smaller? The way you treat yourself during pain matters more than most people realize. For example, imagine a young man who loses his job and feels embarrassed because he was seen as successful. He stops answering calls from friends because he does not want anyone to know what happened. He spends weeks alone, replaying worst-case scenarios and convincing himself that he has failed. The silence begins affecting his sleep, his motivation, and his sense of worth. He feels trapped, but keeps pretending he is fine because he thinks asking for help will make him look weak. Eventually, one close friend reaches out, and he finally opens up. He shares his fear and shame for the first time. Instead of judgment, he receives support, understanding, and practical help. His friend helps him update his resume, introduces him to new opportunities, and most importantly reminds him that losing a job is not losing his value. Problem is still real, but the emotional weight becomes lighter because he no longer carries it alone. Another example is a woman caring for an ill parent while balancing her own family and work. She feels exhausted, but keeps telling herself she has to manage because everyone depends on her. She stops sharing how tired she feels because she does not want to seem incapable. Over time, she becomes emotionally drained, resentful, and physically unwell. She begins feeling guilty for even needing rest, which makes her feel even more trapped. One day, She finally speaks honestly with her sibling and a close friend. She admits that she is struggling and cannot keep functioning this way alone. Instead of disappointment, she receives help. Her sibling takes over some responsibilities, and her friend gives her space to talk and breathe. This support does not remove the pain of the situation, but it gives her room to recover emotionally. She begins sleeping better, feeling less alone, and handling challenges with more steadiness. These examples show that support is not a luxury during chaos. It is often a lifeline. Connection also reminds us of perspective. When people stay alone too long, their thoughts can become distorted. Fear feels bigger, failures feel permanent, and pain feels endless. But healthy people around you can help you see what stress is hiding. They can remind you of your strength when you have forgotten it. They can help you remember that this season is not your whole story. It is also important to choose support wisely. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability. Some people may dismiss your feelings, compare your pain, or make you feel worse after sharing. Protecting your peace means recognizing who feels safe and who drains your emotional energy. Healthy support feels grounding, not performative. It leaves you feeling lighter, clearer, and more human. There is also strength in professional support. Many people delay seeking therapy, counseling, or emotional guidance because they think they should be able to fix themselves alone. This belief keeps many people stuck far longer than necessary. Seeking professional help is not failure. It is wisdom. Sometimes you need someone trained to help you understand patterns, heal old wounds, and build healthier ways of coping. There is courage in choosing healing, even when it feels uncomfortable. One of the greatest lies chaos tells people is that they are alone in what they feel. This is rarely true. Many people have felt lost, afraid, overwhelmed, and uncertain. The difference is not that some never struggle. The difference is that some eventually choose to reach out rather than sink deeper into silence. Life becomes more bearable when you stop trying to be invincible. There is peace in shared burden. There is relief in honest conversation. There is healing in being seen without pretending. You do not need to earn support by suffering perfectly. You do not need to wait until you are breaking to ask for help. You are allowed to need people. You are allowed to be held through hard seasons. You are allowed to say, "This is difficult, and I need care." Calmness is not always created in solitude. Sometimes it is built in conversation, in comfort, in prayer, in tears, shared with someone safe, and in the quiet relief of not having to carry everything by yourself. Life may still be uncertain, but when you are supported, uncertainty feels less frightening. Human connection does not erase storms, but it gives you shelter while you walk through them. Some of the strongest people in the world are not those who never needed help. They are the ones who were brave enough to let love support them when life became too heavy to hold alone. Chapter 7. Trusting yourself and growing through the storm. One of the most important lessons chaos can teach is that strength is often discovered only after life becomes difficult. Many people go through hard seasons believing they are breaking, when in reality they are becoming. Someone who has never been tested may feel confident in comfort, but true self-trust is built when life becomes uncertain, and you still keep moving. When chaos enters life, it often shakes more than your plans. It shakes your identity, your confidence, your sense of safety, and your belief in your own ability to cope can all feel unstable. This is why many people struggle, not only with the situation itself, but with the fear that they are no longer capable. A painful truth about life is that no one can avoid difficult seasons. Loss, failure, rejection, heartbreak, delay, grief, uncertainty, and disappointment are all part of the human experience. The goal is not to become someone who never suffers. The goal is to become someone who learns they can survive suffering without losing themselves. Self-trust is one of the strongest forms of peace, because when you trust yourself, uncertainty becomes less terrifying. You may not know exactly what will happen next, but you know that whatever comes, you will find a way to face it. This belief changes everything. Many people wait to feel fully confident before taking the next step, but confidence rarely comes first. More often, confidence is built by taking small steps while still afraid. Every time you face something hard without giving up, you quietly teach yourself, I can handle more than I thought. This is how resilience is formed, not through perfect strength, but through repeated recovery. A person becomes emotionally stronger, not because life became easy, but because they kept choosing to stand back up. One reason people lose self-trust is because they judge themselves too harshly during hard times. They expect themselves to heal quickly, stay positive, always know what to do, and never feel overwhelmed. When they cannot meet these impossible standards, they begin feeling weak. But growth does not look clean. Healing is often messy. Some days you feel hopeful and clear. Other days you feel tired, discouraged, or lost. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human, and growth is happening beneath what you can see. Trusting yourself means staying loyal to your healing, even when progress feels slow. It means not abandoning yourself just because life feels difficult. It means refusing to turn one hard chapter into a lifelong identity. Many people define themselves by what hurt them. They become attached to labels created in pain. I am broken. I always fail. Nothing ever works for me. But these beliefs are often emotional conclusions formed in temporary darkness. You are more than what happened to you. You are more than your hardest season. Your pain may shape you, but it does not have to imprison you. Growth through chaos often begins when you stop asking, why is this happening, and start asking, what is this teaching me? This question does not remove pain, but it creates meaning, and meaning gives people strength. Difficult seasons can reveal truths comfort often hides. They show you where your boundaries were weak, where your self-worth depended too much on external things, where fear was silently controlling you, and where you have been neglecting your own needs. This awareness can be painful, but it is also powerful, because what you can see clearly, you can begin to change. Growth also requires patience. Many people want healing to happen quickly because pain is uncomfortable, but some lessons take time. Trust takes time, emotional safety takes time, inner peace takes time. You cannot rush becoming whole. There is quiet strength in allowing yourself to grow at a human pace. The world often glorifies fast results, but real transformation is usually slow. It happens in repeated choices, small mindset shifts, and moments where you choose not to give up. For example, imagine a woman who has spent years doubting herself because of repeated rejection in relationships. Each ending made her feel less worthy until she began believing she was the problem. When another relationship ends, she feels devastated and starts slipping into old patterns of self-blame. At first, she feels like nothing has changed, but instead of collapsing fully, she chooses something different. She goes to therapy, she reflects honestly, and begins learning how much of her pain was tied to old wounds and low self-worth. She learns to stop chasing validation and starts building a stronger relationship with herself. Months later, her life is not perfect, but something important has changed. She no longer measures her worth by who stays. She trusts her own value more deeply than before the storm hurt her. But it also taught her how to come home to herself. Another example is a man whose business fails after years of hard work. He feels ashamed, embarrassed, and lost because he tied so much of his identity to success. He believes this failure proves he is incapable and spends months feeling defeated, but slowly he begins rebuilding, not just financially, but emotionally. He learns what mistakes were made without turning those mistakes into self-hatred. He starts again with more humility, more wisdom, and less ego. He discovers that what felt like the end was actually a painful beginning years later. He may still remember the loss, but he also recognizes that the failure forced him to become stronger, wiser, and more grounded than success ever did. These examples reveal something deeply important. Hard seasons often uncover strength you did not know you had. The version of you that emerges after pain can become more aware, more compassionate, and more emotionally steady than the version that entered it. Trusting yourself also means honoring the evidence of your past survival. Think about everything you have already lived through, moments you thought would break you, fears you thought would consume you, losses that felt unbearable. Yet somehow you are still here. You may not have handled everything perfectly, but perfection was never the requirement. Survival, growth, and honesty are enough. When fear tells you that you cannot handle what is ahead, remind yourself of what you have already overcome. You have faced uncertainty before. You have felt pain before. You have rebuilt before. This memory matters because it proves that strength is already part of you. Self-trust is not loud. It is often quiet. It sounds like "I will." Take this one day at a time. It sounds like "I do not know how yet, but I will." Learn it sounds like "This is hard, but I will not abandon myself." This kind of inner voice becomes a source of peace because it creates stability that life cannot easily take away. The storm may still rage around you, but when you trust yourself, the storm no longer defines your limits. You begin to understand that strength is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to keep going with honesty, patience, and courage. Life may still surprise you. Pain may still visit, and uncertainty may still return. But once you learn that you can survive hard things without losing your core, something changes forever. You stop fearing chaos the same way because you realize peace was never about controlling life. It was about becoming someone who can walk through life with steadiness, no matter what season arrives. The goal was never to become untouched by struggle. The goal was to become deeply rooted within yourself, so that even when life shakes you, it does not uproot you. That is what true calmness becomes in the end. Not a perfect life, but a stronger, wiser, more grounded you, who has learned that even in the storm, you are still capable of standing tall. Chapter 8. Creating a peaceful life even after the chaos. Many people believe peace will arrive one day when all problems are solved. They imagine a future where everything is finally in place, where stress disappears, where relationships feel perfect, where money is secure, and where nothing unexpected ever happens. But this idea often keeps people chasing a kind of peace that does not truly exist. Real life does not stay permanently calm. There will always be changes, responsibilities, disappointments, and seasons that test your patience. If your peace depends on perfect circumstances, then your peace will always feel fragile, because life will never remain fully under control. True peace is not the reward you receive after chaos ends. True peace is the life you begin creating while uncertainty still exists. It is not something you wait for. It is something you build. This is one of the most powerful emotional shifts a person can make. The moment you stop postponing peace until everything feels easy, you begin taking your life back. Many people spend years living in survival mode. They become so used to rushing, worrying, fixing, and enduring that they forget what calm even feels like. Their body becomes familiar with tension. Their mind becomes addicted to stress, and their heart forgets what emotional safety feels like. When chaos finally passes, they often expect instant relief, but instead, they feel empty, restless, or afraid because they never truly learned how to live peacefully. They only learned how to survive. This is why healing after hard seasons matters so much. You do not just need to get through difficult times. You need to learn how to create a life that no longer constantly drains you. Creating peace begins with honesty. You have to ask yourself what in your life repeatedly steals your calm. Is it your habits, your relationships, your environment, your thoughts, your people pleasing, your lack of boundaries, your fear of rest, or your constant need to prove something? Many people want peace, but continue living in ways that make peace impossible. They stay in draining cycles because chaos feels familiar. Even unhealthy patterns can feel safer than change because they are known. But healing requires courage. Courage to stop living on autopilot. the courage to let go of what keeps exhausting you, and the courage to choose a different way, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. A peaceful life is often simpler than people expect. It is not always glamorous or exciting. Sometimes peace looks like a slower morning, a healthier sleep routine, fewer toxic conversations, less comparison, more honest relationships, and more time spent in alignment with what actually matters. Peace often grows in ordinary moments. A quiet cup of tea before a busy day, a walk without your phone, a conversation where you feel safe, a room that feels restful, a schedule that respects your energy, a life that feels less performative and more real. Many people think these things are too small to matter, but they are often the exact things that rebuild a nervous system that has lived in stress for too long. Protecting your peace also means becoming more intentional about who and what you allow close to you. Not every relationship deserves continued access to your emotional world. Not every opportunity deserves your yes. Not every demand deserves your energy. As you grow, you may begin wanting less noise, less drama, and less urgency. This is not boredom. This is wisdom. Peaceful people often become more selective, not because they care less, but because they finally understand the cost of chaos. Another part of peaceful living is learning to stop constantly chasing the next thing. Some people never feel calm because they always believe happiness is one achievement away. One more success, one more relationship, one more milestone, one more sign of approval. But this mindset creates endless dissatisfaction because peace keeps moving further away. The mind becomes trained to live in future conditions rather than present gratitude. A peaceful life requires presence. It asks you to notice what is already good, what is already enough, and what is already meaningful in your life now. This does not mean ignoring goals. Means refusing to sacrifice your present well-being for a future version of calm that may never arrive. For example, imagine a woman who spent years in constant stress trying to build the perfect life. She worked endlessly, said yes to everyone, and tied her worth to being productive and needed. She looked successful on the outside, but felt anxious, exhausted, and emotionally disconnected. After a health scare, she was forced to slow down. At first, she resisted because slowing down felt uncomfortable and unfamiliar. But over time, she began changing how she lived. She stopped overcommitting, created healthier routines, and let go of relationships that only brought pressure. Months later, her life looked simpler, but she felt more peaceful than she had in years. She realized she had spent so long chasing a life that looked impressive that she forgot to build one that felt sustainable. Her peace did not come from achieving more. It came from finally choosing herself. Another example is a man who went through a painful divorce that completely disrupted his life. At first, he believed peace would only return if he fixed everything quickly. He rushed to rebuild his image, distract himself, but eventually, he realized that constantly running was keeping him emotionally stuck. He slowed down, faced his pain honestly, and began rebuilding his life with more intention. He focused on healing his relationship with himself, reconnecting with his children, and creating daily routines that brought emotional steadiness. Years later, he still remembered the pain, but it no longer defined him. The chaos changed him, but it also taught him how to build a life rooted in truth rather than appearances. These examples show that peace is often created not by escaping hard seasons, but by letting hard seasons teach you how you truly want to live. A peaceful life also includes forgiveness. This does not always mean reconciling with people who hurt you. It often means releasing emotional weight that keeps you trapped. Forgiveness can mean letting go of resentment, regret, old guilt, and the version of yourself that you keep punishing for past mistakes. You cannot build a calm future while carrying endless emotional debt from the past. At some point, peace requires release. Peace also deepens when you stop trying to become someone else. Many people feel restless because they are living according to expectations that do not truly belong to them. They chase lives that look good from the outside, but feel empty inside. The more honest you become about what truly matters to you, the more aligned your life begins to feel. And alignment creates deep calm because you are no longer fighting yourself every day. One of the most beautiful parts of healing is that after chaos, you often become softer in the right ways. You become less impressed by noise and more drawn to sincerity. You become less willing to abandon yourself to keep others comfortable. You become more grateful for ordinary joy and less dependent on external approval. This is growth in its deepest form, not becoming harder, but becoming wiser. Creating a peaceful life does not mean you will never feel stress again. There will still be hard days. There will still be uncertainty. But the difference is that chaos will no longer own you the way it once did. You will know how to return to yourself. You will know how to pause, how to protect your energy, how to ask for help, how to accept what you cannot control, and how to trust your own resilience. This is what healing makes possible. Not a perfect life, but a life that feels more grounded, honest, and kind to your nervous system. Peace is not far away, waiting for the perfect season. It begins in the choices you make now. It begins in what you stop tolerating. It begins in what you finally allow yourself to need. You do not have to wait for life to become easy before you start living gently. You do not have to earn rest by suffering first. You do not have to prove your worth through exhaustion. You are allowed to choose a life that feels calmer. You are allowed to protect your joy. You are allowed to rebuild after chaos in a way that honors the person you have become. The storm may have changed you, but that does not have to be a tragedy. Sometimes the storm clears away everything false so that something more honest can finally grow. And sometimes the greatest victory in life. Chapter 9. Turning setbacks into wisdom and lasting emotional freedom. One of the most powerful signs of growth is when you stop seeing setbacks only as interruptions and begin seeing them as teachers. This shift does not happen easily because pain naturally makes people focus on what was lost. But over time, those who heal deeply often discover that some of their hardest seasons gave them the wisdom they needed most. A setback can feel like life is moving backwards. A rejection can make effort feel pointless. A failure can make confidence collapse. A delay can make the future feel uncertain. In these moments, it is easy to believe that life is unfair and that everything is falling apart. These feelings are real, and they deserve honesty. But what often creates lasting suffering is the belief that a setback means your life has permanently gone off course. This belief can become more damaging than the event itself because it steals hope and makes people stop trusting life. The truth is that setbacks are not always signs that you are failing. Sometimes they are signs that you are being redirected. Sometimes they reveal that something was not sustainable. Sometimes they slow you down before deeper damage happens. And sometimes they teach you truths that comfort never would. This does not mean every painful event happens for a reason that you can immediately understand. Life can be deeply unfair, and some losses do not make sense right away. But meaning is not always found instantly. Meaning is often built slowly through reflection, healing, and the way you choose to move forward. One of the biggest emotional shifts you can make is learning to stop measuring your life only by visible outcomes. Many people feel broken after setbacks because they only value progress that looks obvious: a promotion, a relationship, a result, a timeline, a clear success. But some of the most important progress in life is invisible. Learning patience is progress. Learning emotional boundaries is progress. Learning how to regulate your mind during fear is progress. Learning to choose yourself after years of self-abandonment is progress. These inner shifts may not be visible to the world, but they change everything about how you live. Setbacks often strip away illusions. They reveal where your peace was too dependent on external things. They expose habits that were harming you and beliefs that were quietly limiting you. In this way, setbacks can become mirrors. They show you not just what happened, but what inside you still needs healing. This kind of reflection requires honesty without cruelty. There is a big difference between learning from pain and punishing yourself with pain. Growth asks for truth, not shame. When something goes wrong, ask yourself, what can this experience teach me about my needs, my patterns, my values, and my next step? This question moves you out of helplessness and into emotional maturity. Setbacks also teach patience with timing. Many people become deeply distressed, not because something did not happen, but because it did not happen when they expected. They feel left behind because life is not matching the timeline they imagined. But life does not always unfold according to our preferred schedule. Some seasons are for action, some are for waiting, some are for loss and rebuilding, and some are for quiet inner change that no one else sees. Learning to respect timing instead of constantly fighting, it creates deep peace. It helps you understand that a delay is not always a denial, and that slow seasons are not wasted seasons. Another important lesson setbacks teach is detachment from perfection. Many people suffer intensely because they built their identity around, oh, right. When life disrupts this image, they feel ashamed rather than adaptable. But perfection is a fragile foundation because life will eventually challenge it. Emotional freedom grows when you stop needing every chapter to look ideal and start allowing your life to be human. There is freedom in knowing that mistakes do not cancel your worth. There is relief in accepting that setbacks can be part of becoming wiser rather than proof that you are incapable. For example, imagine a man who spent years working toward moving abroad for a dream opportunity. He planned carefully, saved money, and shaped his future around this goal. At the final stage, his visa is denied. He feels devastated because he believed this move would finally bring the life he wanted. At first, he feels angry, ashamed, and hopeless. He compares himself to others who seem to be moving ahead and begins thinking that all his effort. But over time, something shifts. He stops defining his worth by one closed door. He reflects on what the dream really represented: freedom, purpose, growth, and realizes those deeper needs can still be met in more than one way. He starts exploring opportunities he had ignored before, and eventually builds a meaningful path he never would have considered. Years later, he may still remember the disappointment, but he also sees that the setback forced him to become more flexible, more grounded, and less dependent on one specific outcome. Another example is a woman who goes through a painful friendship betrayal. Someone she trusted deeply breaks that trust and leaves her feeling hurt and foolish. She begins doubting her judgment and feels afraid to open up again. At first, the pain makes her want to shut down emotionally forever. But with time, she begins reflecting more honestly. She realizes the experience taught her to recognize red flags, honor her own boundaries, and stop ignoring discomfort just to keep peace. The betrayal hurt deeply, but it also awakened self-respect that she had long neglected. Her future relationships become healthier, not because pain was good, but because she chose to grow rather than harden. These examples reveal something essential: emotional freedom is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to let pain refine you without turning you bitter. Setbacks can either make you more fearful or more conscious. The difference often lies in whether you choose reflection or resistance. If you only focus on what was lost, you may stay emotionally trapped. But if you allow yourself to learn, then even painful chapters can become part of your strength. Another beautiful part of growth is that setbacks often make people more compassionate. Those who have known uncertainty tend to judge less and understand more. They become softer with themselves and kinder toward others because struggle has made them more human. This softness is not weakness. It is wisdom earned through difficulty. Emotional freedom also comes from releasing the need to make every hard experience meaningful right away. Some pain simply needs to be felt before it can be understood. You do not have to rush healing or force lessons too early. Sometimes wisdom arrives months or years later, after the heart has had time to settle. Trust this process. Not everything broken needs to be immediately repaired. Some things need space, some things need grief, and some things need time before clarity appears. The important thing is that you do not stay stuck in the belief that one setback has the power to define your whole life. It does not. You are still becoming. You are still learning. Your story is still unfolding. And one painful chapter is not the final truth about who you are. Lasting peace is not built by avoiding failure, disappointment, or pain. It is built by developing a relationship with life that is flexible, honest, and resilient. When you stop expecting life to always move smoothly, you stop being shocked every time it changes. When you begin seeing yourself as someone who can adapt, you stop fearing setbacks the same way. This is emotional freedom, the ability to bend without breaking, to feel pain without losing hope, to face uncertainty without losing your center. Setbacks may slow you down, but they do not have to stop you. They may wound you, but they can also wake you. They may hurt deeply, but they can also become the chapters that teach you how strong, calm, and wise you are always capable of becoming. Sometimes the life you wanted falls apart, so the life you truly need can begin. And sometimes the setback you feared most becomes the turning point that finally sets you free. Chapter 10. Living with lasting calm in an unpredictable world. Calmness is often misunderstood as a final destination where life becomes permanently smooth and free from problems. But in reality, calmness is not the absence of chaos. It is the ability to remain steady while life continues to change around you. No matter how prepared you become, life will always remain It is the nature of life itself. The goal is not to control everything. The goal is to become someone who is no longer easily shaken by everything. Lasting calm is built when you stop treating every disruption as a personal collapse and start seeing it as part of a larger flow of life. When you understand that change is constant, you stop expecting stability from the outside world and begin building it within yourself. This inner stability is what allows people to face uncertainty without losing their center. It does not mean they never feel stress or sadness. It means those emotions no longer completely define them or control their actions. One of the deepest foundations of lasting calm is acceptance of impermanence. Everything in life is temporary. Moments, emotions, relationships, situations, and even difficulties come and go. When you truly understand this, you begin to loosen your grip on fear because you realize that nothing stays forever, not even pain. Many people suffer more from resistance than from reality. They struggle not because life is unbearable, but because they refuse to accept that life is changing. This resistance creates inner tension that makes even small problems feel heavy. When you accept impermanence, you begin to live with more softness. You appreciate good moments without clinging to them, and you face difficult moments without believing they will last forever. This creates emotional balance. Another key part of lasting calm is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity means you no longer let every feeling control your behavior. You learn to feel emotions without becoming them. You can feel anger without becoming destructive. You can feel sadness without becoming hopeless. You can feel fear without becoming paralyzed. This creates space between emotion and action, and that space is where wisdom lives. Calm people are not people who feel less. They are people who understand themselves more deeply. They recognize their emotional patterns and respond instead of reacting impulsively. They take responsibility for their inner world instead of blaming life for every emotional shift. For example, imagine a man who has learned to build emotional stability over time. When an unexpected financial problem appears, he feels the initial stress like anyone else. But instead of panicking or assuming failure, he pauses, assesses the situation, and focuses on what can be done step by step. The problem is real, but his mind does not spiral into worst case. Thinking he knows from experience that panic does not solve anything, clarity does. He communicates calmly, seeks solutions, and avoids unnecessary self-blame. Now imagine someone without this inner stability facing the same situation Their mind immediately jumps to fear and imagination. They think everything is ruined, they will not recover, and nothing will work again. The emotional reaction becomes bigger than the actual problem. The difference is not intelligence or luck, it is emotional training and self-awareness. Another important part of lasting calm is learning to live with enough instead of always chasing more. Many people remain internally restless because they believe peace is always just one achievement away. One more success, one more possession, one more milestone will finally make everything feel complete. But this mindset keeps peace permanently delayed because the mind is never trained to rest in the present. It is always reaching forward. Living with enough does not mean you stop growing. It means you stop tying your worth to constant pursuit. You can still have goals and ambitions, but your emotional stability is no longer dependent on achieving them immediately. This shift brings deep relief because it removes pressure from every moment of life. For example, imagine a woman who spent years believing she would only feel happy once she reached a certain career level. She worked tirelessly, constantly pushing herself, and rarely allowed rest. Even when she achieved small successes, she immediately moved the goal higher. Eventually, she realized she was always tired, even when she was succeeding. She had trained her mind to never feel satisfied. She began practicing gratitude for what she already had, while still working toward her goals. Over time, her stress reduced, and she began experiencing calm, even in the middle of ambition. Her life did not become less successful, but it became more peaceful. Another example is a young man who constantly compared himself to others. He felt behind because others seemed to be achieving more quickly. This comparison created anxiety and self-doubt. Later, he began focusing on his own path instead of external timelines. He realized that every person moves differently, and that comparison steals attention from growth. He started measuring progress by his own consistency, rather than others' achievements. His mind became quieter and more focused. Lasting calm also comes from self-honesty. Many people feel chaotic because they ignore their own needs for too long. They push through exhaustion, suppress the emotions, and avoid difficult truths. This creates internal conflict that eventually surfaces as stress or burnout. Honesty with yourself creates alignment. When your actions match your needs, your life feels less divided. You are not constantly fighting yourself internally. This includes being honest about rest, relationships, boundaries, and emotional limits. When you acknowledge what drains you and what supports you, you begin shaping a life that feels more sustainable. Another important truth is that calmness is strengthened through repetition, not through one moment of insight, but through consistent practice. Every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you choose understanding over judgment, every time you return to presence instead of fear, you are strengthening your inner stability. Calmness is like a muscle. It becomes stronger with use. There will still be days when you feel overwhelmed. There will still be moments when life feels heavy. But the difference is that you will not lose yourself in those moments. You will have tools, awareness, and inner trust to return to balance. This is what lasting calm looks like, not a life without storms, but a life where storms no longer define your identity. The journey that began with understanding chaos now ends with understanding yourself more deeply. You are not fragile in the way you once believed. You are adaptable, you are capable, and you are able to grow through what once felt overwhelming. Life will remain unpredictable, but you will no longer meet that unpredictability with panic. You will meet it with awareness, patience, and inner strength. And that is the real meaning of calmness. Not control over life, but trust in yourself within it. Conclusion. Life will never become completely free from chaos. There will always be moments that test your patience, challenge your emotions, and push you into uncertainty. This is not something you can fully escape, because it is part of the human experience. But what you can change is the way you exist inside that chaos. You can change how you respond, how you think, how you feel, and how you carry yourself when life becomes heavy. You can learn to slow down instead of rushing to react. You can learn to accept instead of constantly resisting. You can learn to reach out instead of isolating yourself. You can learn to trust yourself even when everything feels unclear. Staying calm is not about becoming someone who never feels stress. It is about becoming someone who does not lose themselves because of stress. It is about building an inner space where fear does not take complete control, where thoughts do not run wild without awareness, and where emotions are allowed, but not allowed to destroy your stability. Throughout this journey, you have seen that chaos is not only what happens outside you, but also what happens within your mind when pressure rises. You have learned that pausing before reacting can change outcomes, that acceptance can reduce suffering, that daily habits build emotional strength, that overthinking can be managed, that support from others is not weakness, that setbacks can become wisdom, and that lasting calm is possible even in an unpredictable world. These lessons are not meant to be read once and forgotten. They are meant to be practiced slowly in real life. Calmness is not created through understanding alone, but through repetition, through small daily choices, through moments where you choose awareness instead of reaction, through times when you choose patience instead of panic. There will be days when you forget these lessons. There will be moments when emotions take over, and you feel like you are back at the beginning. That is part of being human, too. Growth is not a straight line. It is a process of returning again and again to what you know helps you heal. The most important truth: peace is not waiting for you at the end of a perfect life. Peace is something you can begin practicing even in imperfect days. It begins in your breath, in your thoughts, in your choices, and in the way you speak to yourself when things are difficult. You do not need to control everything to be okay. You only need to stay connected to yourself while everything changes around you. If you continue to practice what you have learned here, calmness will slowly stop feeling like something distant and start becoming a natural part of how you live. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become steadier. And in the end, that is the real victory. Not a life without chaos, but a mind that remains peaceful within it. The end.
Kindly subscribe to my channel.